I want to talk about your documentary and your experiences in South Africa. Very moving interviews that you carried out with some of the victims of the farm attacks. Now, this is a huge story. Interesting that it seems to be a huge concern to the right, let's say, or conservatives, or not the woke progressive side of things. It all came to a head when Cyril Ramaphosa was at the White House Oval Office with Trump, and Trump made him squirm through a video of the political groups in South Africa chanting "Kill the Boer." The Boer, forgive me. That's actually Julius Malema. Yeah, kill the Boer. And we have seen horrific violence in that country. It seems to be disproportionately targeted against white farmers, not exclusively white farmers, but it was already one of the highest murder levels in the world, that country. And curiously, there seems to be complete denial. Actually, it's not just that it's ignored, I note, but denied. So, for example, after the Oval Office, the incident with Ramaphosa, BBC Verify put out a piece, essentially attempting to debunk Trump's position. But here's an example of how they approach it. There's a video of a road in South Africa with 1,000 white crosses lining the roads. And Trump incorrectly said that these were the graves of those victims. The BBC Verify said that's incorrect. It was a memorial service for what they didn't say. Well, it was a memorial service for two individuals. What they didn't say was that each cross represented a killed white farmer. So BBC Verify, the BBC fact-checking mechanism, ironically, who fact-checks the fact-checkers? Well, we do here.
Obviously, the BBC pumps out a lot of fake news now.
Yes.
And it's essentially an arm of the state. They're civil servants, a lot of them on final salary pensions. A lot of it can't be trusted. And, you see these documentaries like their Hamas-sponsored documentary. Was that Channel 4 or was it BBC? The Hamas-sponsored documentary about the conflict in Israel and Palestine. So, this is what I really regret here is that Trump was ill-informed in the way he went about conveying the information. Two things: inaccurate use of photos. One photo was from the Congo of a supposed atrocity. Secondly, calling memorial crosses graves. They were representative memorial crosses, and they represent real lives. So his use of language has undermined what it is. And then secondly, this concept of calling it genocide. I've been to South Africa many times, and I went there specifically to interview white Boer or Afrikaner farmers, and they say that it fits the characteristic of genocide, but it doesn't. Black and white people are murdered on farms. In South Africa, the country is so chaotic that the murder rate is so high that everybody, or all ethnicities, is under threat at all the time of being murdered. But the real point here is that there is deliberate racial incitement by the EFF under Julius Malema. This is a radical Marxist communist party who hates white people and wants to get rid of them from Africa or Southern Africa. They want to enforce land reclamation without compensation, and if that means through violent means, they will do it. And this song, this so-called apartheid song, bear in mind it's over 30 years since the end of apartheid, they're singing "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer" is incitement, and there have been cases in court where the murderer has said, yes, I've heard this song or sung it or heard the words of leaders at the EFF and I wanted to murder white farmers. So let's be clear here is that there is racial incitement and there is racial hatred and prejudice which is causing the death of white farmers on farms. Mm-hmm. But it is not at a level that you can compare to genocide, and I think it's wrong to do that. And it's what's happening with the international left is because they they're more interested in decolonization, and they see it's a bit like the Chagos. They don't believe that the Afrikaners have a right to be in Africa, and because they hold more of the land, albeit they are productive on it and feed Africa or feed Southern Africa, they don't have a problem with violence against white farmers, and they basically want to cover it up. So when you've got people of the right wrongly claiming genocide or using wrong facts, the so-called left-wing and fact checkers use that to deny there's a problem.
Yes.
There is a problem. I went there. And what's most staggering about the situation on farm murders, it's not that these people are going and killing them and taking the land, that they are getting hold of children, of pensioners, people in wheelchairs, and torturing them for hours, blow tortures, cutting them up. There are cases where, and this is really graphic if you read about it, they're horrendous sexual assault using bottles and knives to cut apart genitalia, hours and hours of brutal torture, rape of children in front of parents or in front of grandparents. These sort of this is sending a message. This is gratuitous. This is not just an act of murder, and of which there are many thousands of them in Africa. So this is why I made this strong. So I want to understand just how serious the issue is and to what extent it's connected to the incitement that happens from when leaders sing these songs. There's two other important facts here. One is that the ANC refuses to condemn that song, which is clearly hate speech. But more importantly, they had a court ruling, I think it was back in around 2012, that said that song, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer, was hate speech. In 2022, they overturned it, so it's now not hate speech.
Why? Do they say free speech?
I don't know why it was overturned, but it just shows that the state doesn't take it seriously.
What's their motivation, do you think, in not condemning or not saying it's hate speech? Is it because they would lose political support if the ANC would lose political support if they condemn it?
But the problem in the country is the ANC and its corruption. They run the country badly, and the EFF broke away from the ANC, so they're sort of the radical communist element. So they're losing support to the left. They're losing support to Democratic. I think it's called the Democratic Alliance. So there's another opposition party which has control of some parts of the Western Cape and runs their area quite well administratively. So they're not wanting to hemorrhage the votes of people of essentially the racist anti-apartheid vote, which is very important to their identity and to their cause. I don't truly know why, because the international capital they're losing from it, the reputational damage is ridiculous. And in today's day and age, 30 years after apartheid, you'd think, okay, they can keep the spirit of it alive, but you don't need to sing a song which is literally about killing people on their farms.
Right. And people are being killed.
So people are being killed.
It's one thing if there's no one's actually killed.
Yeah, exactly. If people weren't, and bear in mind those crosses, there's been 3,000 people killed on farms, a majority of those white, and a majority of those that have been really brutal. There's something going on here, and it's right that it's been brought to the attention of the White House and the world. It's wrong that it's been downplayed by the BBC and the left-wing mainstream media, but it's also wrong to be used by the alt-right to say this is some sort of genocide.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Let's just pick into the genocide
It's a real
thing.
issue.
White farmers are 44,000. There are 44,000 white farmers in South Africa.
No.
Is that wrong?
1,000. Sorry. So how many Boers are there? Oh, yeah. There's
44,000 white farmers.
Yeah.
What problem do you have with that number?
I imagine the figure's a lot higher.
Really?
Yeah.
So I had it that. Okay, well, let me broader context. Population 65 million, of whom about 5 million are white.
Yeah.
And the white farmers are, I had it as 44,000, which, and there's been something like 3,000 white farmers killed.
Yeah.
The national murder rate is 42 per 100,000. So that's extremely high for the world, like as a murder rate. But for white farmers, it's 196 per 100,000, the murder rate. So that's the difference there. You're looking at 5 times more.
Mm-hmm.
And But then my question would be, it's farmers, not other whites, right? So let's say in Cape Province, where there's a huge white population, particularly around Cape Town, are those whites disproportionately targeted?
I don't know, and I don't want to speak out of turn at the statistics. All I'm saying is that you go to a lot of places and race relations are good. You know, a lot of my friends that work in conservation on reserves or work on farms, you know, they speak Horsey, they speak Zulu, they get on. That there is harmony, and in a nation that's in a fate of a stage of genocide doesn't have that. I think it's, what we're talking about is there is a strain of racial incitement, of hatred, and then there's the apartheid era inequality. You know, the land is held disproportionately
because it was owned before apartheid, and that's just continued.
So I think these issues, it's complex, and it's really annoying when it gets broken down into explainers or fact checkers or social media commentary. This is a complex country with a challenging, complex history. I just went there to speak to farmers and just to understand how brutal and what life is like. How I was under the impression, by the way, they're all like John Dutton and Yellowstone, all owned like the big property, had nice cars and helicopters, and every farmer is wealthy, and they just exploit the local community who work for them like slaves, like peasants. Not the case. These people are very, very devout religious. They generally live in one-floor, small building farmhouses, which aren't luxurious at all. They work really long, hard hours. They produce a huge amount of food, well, most of the food for southern Africa. They employ people from the local community. They've turned fairly unproductive land into being productive, and now they live in fear of being attacked, raped, and tortured, and having their families killed in front of their eyes. It's a tough life. Is it fair that they have all the land? No, it's not. But it's not a glamorous, easy life. They live in complete fear, and they feel that the state's failing to protect them. And not as only the state failing to protect them, they feel that they are not condoning what is racial incitement, which, as we all know, what the EFF doing is calling for the killing of those people, killing for farmers. So that's the issue.
Sorry to be, I know you don't, it's very emotional. Forgive me but I just want to understand this. Is it that they're being targeted because they're living on large plots of land, that they're perceived to be very wealthy, and there's a jealousy towards...
Yes, yeah.
That's why they are being targeted, rather than, let's say, the extremely wealthy billionaire or whatever, factory owners or the business types who don't have lots of land, but it's targeting the farmers specifically. And I'm just trying to understand why they are.
Land is the eternal battle of humans. People like to own land. Sovereignty is a question of land. Land is important for so many reasons, and that's what's being weaponized is land ownership. You know, look at Zimbabwe. Okay, land ownership in Rhodesia was not fair, but the country was better structured as it was, and fed not just Rhodesia, but it fed for wider Africa. Mm-hmm. It was a better system. If you just take those farmers out, as happened in Zimbabwe, and then allow people to move onto it and live on it in subsistence farming, you destroy jobs, you destroy the local economy, you destroy the country's ability to feed itself. And look at the inflation on the Zimbabwean dollar or Zimbabwean pounds, whatever it is. Like you need wheelbarrow. There was a point where you needed wheelbarrows of currency to buy bread. So this is really about ideology and about it's emotional, not logical. Mm-hmm. The ANC has failed to deliver better opportunities for all ethnic groups. It's failed to create a plan. You know, where is their equivalent of Cirencester or the Farming Academy to train black farmers to take over land and run it? Why are they not doing this on an industrial scale and helping to create greater equality in farming and land ownership?
Yes.
Instead, they're weaponizing race.
Yes.
It's very simple. It's the weaponisation of race.
The future isn't just bleak for white South Africans, for black South Africans
as well. It's worse for black. Let's be clear. Life is far worse for black South Africans than it is for white South Africans.
Yeah.
It is a country, sadly, in decline.
And I think it's 59 South Africans have been given political refuge in America. Do you think the British should be taking white South Africans?
I don't think we can take anyone right now. I mean, we have millions of people in social housing in Britain. Our kind of, I think it's the wrong approach. Giving refuge. This is what I mean about it. It's being politicised, and the Trump White House has fallen into this sort of alt-right politicisation of the matter. There is a serious issue here. They're right to raise it, but I just don't think. I don't agree with this big photo opportunity of creating saying that they're refugees. I have been to refugee camps. And one that is imprinted on my mind is one in Kandahar, South Africa. And you just see the absolute state of deprivation, poverty, children skinny, not getting water for weeks, living in these UNHCR tents. That to me is a refugee. They've got nowhere to go. They've got no rights. Their life is hell. And I'd hate to see the word dumbed down in the same way as so many words in the English language have been dumbed down and become meaningless, like the word racism, for example.
Well, I might actually disagree. So I think that you're probably right. It doesn't make the state of immigration in Britain. We can't do it. We can't have more people coming here. We need to sort out our immigration numbers. But when it comes to America, where they're just dealing with illegal immigrants, but they still have well over 1 million legal migrants going to the States every year. And if you have farmers who haven't got any assets except for the land, and it's only worth whatever they can farm from it, and they're being targeted disproportionately high and targeted because they're white farmers, then from their point of view, they can't actually necessarily afford to leave and up and leave. They don't have the assets to necessarily. They might not be global citizens in the way that other people are. It's not completely out of the question that they would be given, if they've been told, if they know they're targets of this. They might even have been individually named.
In Cape Town and Johannesburg, Pretoria.
But the farmers that are.
No, but if you stop farming, you're not a farmer. You're just going to go to
so their options are just go get another job.
That's what a lot of people are doing, leaving farming. But look, I don't want to sort of go into the deep social commentary on all this. All I'm saying is the rights and wrong of granting you refugee status. I just don't want to undermine what a refugee is, and I think it's been politicised by the White House, and you will see from my film, which I'll plug. We've put this out on Outpost Studios on Substack. It's also out on X for free because I want people to see this. It is brutal what's happening, and I wanted to show the real story without it being over politicised by the international left and right. And that is definitely what's happening with this issue. I'm not saying those people aren't poor and it's good for them to have better lives in America, but it's just the optics of it and the way this fight is portraying out. It does not doing any favours to white South African farmers. It's not doing any favours to racial harmony in the country. It's not improving the prospects of different ethnic groups there. It's just with the weaponisation of race. And actually, it is quite disgusting what's happened since BLM happened. Or that movement grown is we talk so much more about race. It's horrendous.
Yes.
And I blame the woke left and I blame the BLM movement for that. The fact that we're even having this conversation. Yeah,
I was last in South Africa in January, February 2020, just before the pandemic, and it was unbelievably woke. And the sort of all the slogans, that all of that worldview, the kind of, instead of clapping hands, clicking fingers, and I was like, okay. And reports I've heard is it's much woker than the West.
Where is it?
Where in South Africa?
Yeah,
I was in Johannesburg.
Oh, really? Okay.
I actually had a fantastic time, and
I love the country, love the people, and it's got so much to give. It just needs to be better governed. But I don't want to be the person telling them that they need to be better governed, although they do need it. But when we've got massive issues in this country.
My last question on South Africa would be, is this a minority group? Because even the EFF they have very few seats in Parliament, something like 39 or something, and not nothing obviously, but is this anti-Boer, anti-white ideology widespread, or is it a minority?
Well, I would suggest that you get Ernst Roots or Ernst Van Zyl from the AfriForum on here, because they're African. I do not want to speak on behalf of them, but what I would say is, I have experience in there working in the country, where conservation, it's a great country, and those farms and the brutality of what I saw, the desperation and the fear is real, and that is a tragedy. And look, you're a creative yourself, a musician. I've become a filmmaker since I left the military, and I want to use the skills I've got to shine a light on issues that aren't fashionable in Britain, America, from the mainstream media. Another film I want to make is about the decline and the decline of Christianity in the Middle East and the persecution of Christians. There were so many issues that, like the BBC Two, won't touch. And that's why I wanted to make this film about white farmers in South Africa, because the last film that was made there was sort of Louis Theroux for the BBC, and it was very much about making Boers or Afrikaners, is about stitching them up as racist and still wanting apartheid. That is the angle the BBC will always take. And I just thought, let's look at this issue and just look at the lives of farmers and tell their story. And I think there's a big space in what I do in the filmmaking world for shining a light on issues in a non-woke way, looking at things that are really important. And that's why I did my Afghanistan film, looking at the withdrawal and looking at what NATO achieved when people didn't want to discuss those issues. I think we have a responsibility for people with conservative Christian values to make films shining a light on issues that the mainstream media deliberately ignores.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where can people find it? It's on Substack.
So we set up Outpost Studios on Substack, which is documentaries, reporting, and conversations like this, important conversations. That's on Substack. And then we've put it out for free on X, at Outpost Studios on X. It'll go out on YouTube in the next 24 hours. It's a 20-minute report, really just looking at the issues through the eyes of two farmers that have been attacked, shot at on their farm, and one in particular, a husband and wife in their 70s. The wife was attacked when she was on her own with a hammer and knife.
It's very brutal watching.
It's brutal.
But a very important contribution to people getting awareness for what's going on. So congratulations in that sense.